evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee here on February 1st, 2016. What I'd first like to do is do a call to order. Madam Secretary, can you take roll?
Chairperson Hanneman. Vice Chair Lapierre.
Here.
Member Bagwell.
Here.
Member Cardinal.
Here.
Member Millay.
Here.
Member Scheck. Member Wickstead.
Here.
A quorum's present.
And Ronnie does have an excused absence. I'll be running the meeting in her absence. Number 3, public comments. Any public comment on any topic, whether it's on our agenda tonight or not, feel free to come on up. I'd like to move for approval of the minutes from our September 2nd, 2015 meeting, and also the November 17th, 2015 meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We would have so before you take action on these, I just want to note for the record that, as you said, we have September 2nd meetings and November 17th meetings. So I just want to note for the record that the September 2nd meeting minutes are beyond a 45-day requirement. So by what's supposed to happen is within 45 days or the next meeting after that, you are to approve the minutes. But because the next meeting was a joint meeting with RTC, you didn't approve the minutes at that time. So you're approving them with this. And I just wanted to note that that's okay. That's just noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the minutes of September 2nd, 2015 and November 17, 2015.
Second.
We have a second from Member Wickstead. And yay? Votes for yay?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 5.1. And both the next two agenda items are action items. One thing we wanted to talk about was maybe talking about item 5.2 in front of 5.1, just so we know what the budget is first. And I'm open to discussion with you guys. So 5.1 talks about what we're going to do with the money. 5.2 talks about how much money we're going to have to do what we would like to do with. Obviously, I think it would probably be better to discuss how much money we'll have before we talk about how much, what we're going to do with that. Everyone in agreement with that?
Yep.
And both conversations kind of run into each other anyways, too. So we're gonna do item 5.2 first, okay, and then we'll go on to 5.1.
Great.
And Lee's going to give us a presentation on item 5.2.
Right, okay. That's the facade improvement program. Okay, thank you, and good evening. For the record, Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. Yeah, we had some discussion about this and thought that certainly you know what the two items are. The first item has to do with all the priorities that were said earlier, which includes a facade improvement plan and then allocating funding to it. But how much money you allocate to the facade improvement plan kind of depends on some of these parameters we need to discuss in detail for the facade improvement plan. So we'll discuss that first. So included in your packet, I've included a memo. Included in that is a spreadsheet on page 5 of the packet that shows, after doing some research online and talking to the local agencies in the state, but of other facade improvement programs around the country. And so in this table, it kind of just goes through the high-level basics of how they do it, just to kind of compare. And if you look in the column, obviously there's the maximum funding that is granted from the agency to the person doing those improvements. And there was some confusion that I've heard a couple times on the required match. So the required match is the percentage of the total project cost that the property owner has to contribute. Actually, let me pull up the spreadsheet here real quick. Okay, yeah, so this is the spreadsheet I'm talking about that's printed in your packet. So under required match, for example, if the total project cost to do the facade improvements is $10,000, if a 50% match means the property owner has to contribute $5,000. So, that's an easy one because that's 50%, but if it's for some of these where it's a 70% match that's required by the property owner, that means they're contributing the bulk of it. They're contributing the 70% of the cost, or $7,000, and the city would contribute, or in that case, the city would contribute the $3,000. So the match is what the percentage of the total project cost that the property owner has to put in to the project. So just for clarification. So for example, if let's just at the top of the list there is Henderson, Nevada. Let's go down to the next one. It's a rounder number. Las Vegas, Nevada, the maximum funding in the grant is $25,000. Oh, that one, $25,000. I think they're all different. But the required match is 66%, so that's something on the order of $30,000. So if the total project cost would be $55,000, the city puts in up to $25,000, and the property owner puts a 66. Anyway, any further explanation needed for that? I think we got it now. Sorry, I know. Let's see. There's probably some better ones with some nice round numbers, but okay. Okay, so and again, in your staff report, I talk a little bit about the kind of the ranges in comparison, but if you can allow me, I'll just go through the outline of the program as we're recommending it for discussion. Again, I think I've talked to some property owners. I've got some feedbacks from various people. So I these aren't completely random numbers, but they are still up for discussion in terms of what these parameters are. And so just going through them to talk a little bit about some rationale. So it's suggested that the maximum funding per parcel be $25,000. Again, part of that is based on the budget that we have available in redevelopment to provide for this. And part of it is on talking to people about actual cost of fixing up of downtown building facades. So there's some realistic numbers that put to that without getting into a lot of detail on a specific project. But so that's kind of a suggested number there. Required property owner match 50%, again, kind of, and the funding types being a grant. So I was actually, in going through these programs across the country, surprised at how many of them were grants with no payback at all, and no payback, as you see in that list. I didn't weed out any. The ones I could find the basic information on that I put in there, and the two that aren't grants, or that you may consider loans, they are grants after 3 to 5 years. It amortizes out to no payback. So they're effectively grants. And the idea being, again, and I think kind of going back to the whole basis of doing this type of project, is that a facade improvement program brings up, it's something that everybody can see. It improves the property values of surrounding properties, or makes it more desirable. At least we can at least say that. Versus kind of in the past, Carson City Redevelopment has an incentive program for bringing in and rehabbing buildings and doing business which were interior. And that program was suspended in 2010. It was the year it was suspended, and really partly because you're picking winners and losers, because that really benefits one property and adds to the value of that one property, but doesn't necessarily do a lot for the district, for surrounding properties, or the district as a whole. Whereas a facade improvement program, I think, has proved itself elsewhere that it's a benefit to the area and the community in general. So I think that's why it's mainly strictly a grant program. Requires some skin in the game from the property owner, but there's generally no payback for these visible facade improvements. We've talked a bit about the process, and ranging And it definitely ranges from administrative approval, where there's just a pot of money and they submit applications and they're processed through the office, and it ranges to having county or board of supervisors approval or the equivalent of that. But I think a good solution here is to have these come before RAC and have that be the final, again, for discussion. But if we're talking about the allocation, the funding decision, how much money to put in there ultimately is the Board of Supervisors' decision, Redevelopment Authority. But for RAC to examine each application, make sure they comply with all the other parameters we'll talk about, the design standards. So that's what I would suggest, that the process for going through this program. And then the permitted area. So I would say at least as we initially fund this, because I think part of the main reason for doing this program is to improve upon the investment the city's making in the downtown and the streets, and to protect the investment that the city's making on the downtown and streets and the South Carson Street corridor. So I think at least at first to further that intent would be to restrict this program to those streets, which would be in the redevelopment district and anywhere on Carson Street, but that could be in either district, one or two. On Curry Street and the streets between Carson Street and Curry Street, there are some properties that don't necessarily front on each, but have frontage between there. And then William Street, which from Curry Street east, and for being in the redevelopment district, that goes almost to Salomon Road. So it's across the street from Mills Park and almost to Salomon Road is how far that goes out there. Some of the other things, I think, based on discussions I've had with, again, locally, but kind of pulling some examples from what others had and what we want to do locally, we want to write in there that they have to comply with our design standards. And I have included those in your packet specifically because I do get questions a lot about that we need better design standards in Carson City. Well, honestly, it's not. Most of it is not that we need better design standards. It's that we need new development that gets built to our current design standards is largely the issue. Not that there can't be improvement in some areas, but that's largely the issue. So that when they come in, they need to comply with these development standards, design standards, and they can improve the buildings. Which also for the downtown area specifically includes guidelines for renovation and restoration of existing structures. That's really primarily about historic building restoration and the ways to do that and the ways not to do that. Moving on, there's just some other kind of administrative things. With an application, we obviously want to see plans that show the details at enough detail to be able to review the design and how what the city's going to be getting for their investment in the facade. And again, looking at other problems, taxes need to be paid current. There aren't code enforcement issues that are unresolved on there. In terms of repayment, I think this should be fairly obvious, but it should be on a reimbursement basis only. So it's not a grant given them up front and then hopefully spend that money. So it would be at a 50% reimbursement rate through the project to ensure that they're not getting more money than would otherwise than was authorized. Again, the second to last bullet there is just about getting bids for the project if the rehabilitation cost is $25,000 or more. That's the same as a city purchasing policy, so I'm just following that. And if it's below that, you can get bid just based on knowledge. You've got to give it the sniff test that it's a legitimate bid, and certainly, we'll do that. But if it's over $25,000, we'd recommend having them get the 3 bids in conformance with city policy. And then having a deadline of how soon after approval that they have to have work completed. And I saw some as short a time frame as 60 or 90 days. There was 100 days and maybe a year, so that could be debated. But I thought, so it suggests 180 days from the time start of the funding year or the time of approval, whichever's later. And that language has to do with that. You may be approving funding for that may not be able, in May, that may not kick into July 1st. And then they have 180 days from that date to complete it. So those are the overall pictures. You have the packet. I'm sure you've had time to read this. So, I guess I'll finish that summary with that and be able to try to answer questions, and you can discuss how we want to make. Ultimately, we're looking for a recommendation to take to the Board of Supervisors with these, from which we would develop the program and the policies and get it implemented into the official policies as necessary to implement this program. Thanks.
Real quick before I open it for questions, was that the presentation for item 5.1 and 5.2?
No, that's just 5.2.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Lee on item 5.2?
Yeah, for the record, Chris Wickstead. Lee, on the proposed plan for facade improvement, I think it's all great for the most part. For the most part. Should we say at least 50%, just in case the property owner or the business person can put in more, or they want to do a bigger improvement, so that it allows that? I mean, I know it probably does with at 50%, but I just trying to be as flexible as possible.
It's a required minimum. We could say, yeah, that's how
Okay.
it should be clearly stated. Thank you.
Okay, and then the second question I had is, do we have any idea of how many potential properties would be eligible without singling any of them out?
How many properties would be eligible?
Yeah, because if we just ballpark estimate right now, we could do at least 5 projects at $25,000 in the first year. I'm just trying to get an idea of what could we do, how effective could this be overall if we change some numbers around, or should we change some numbers around?
Well, number of properties on Carson Street is a lot of properties. It's probably in the downtown area, because we recently did this. I mean, it's 60 to 100 individual properties. I think more like 60, somewhere in that range of total properties just within the downtown area between Carson Street and Curry Street. Yeah, probably 50, 60. And then as you go south and east from there, there's a lot of properties. I think, as we get to the budget and how much to allocate for it, the question is really how many will take it, how many do we think will take advantage of this? I think, when we get to the discussion, I think in the first year, we have the funds, and you want to make as funds available and kind of taper off over time, although that could be evaluated. But there have been 2 downtown property owners that have already approached me with interest in this. So one would cost a lot more than the other to fix up. So again, it ranges. It's not that everybody would need not everybody would do a $50,000 project. A lot of facades really could do a lot of improvement with just painting and maybe some awnings, but some fairly minor work. But that's something, even with this item, I haven't been approached by a lot more, and we want to go out and market this. We'll want to, when whatever the result is as it comes out of it, we'll want to do some outreach to let everybody know this is available. At this point, I haven't done that to really go out and see who would be interested in doing it.
Thank you.
So, Lee, when we talk about that the property will have to come up to code, is it only on what is being changed? So let's say I'm only going to put in new lights. Those lights will come to the new standard, but not the whole facade of other things. Is that correct? I just want to be clear. It's like, whoops, we're not putting in a $10,000 project that caused me to do $50,000 more in improvements.
Right. So it's all improvements need to comply. So it's the new stuff.
I think we should be clear that it's only the new improvement that is coming to the new code.
All new improvements, okay.
New improvements only. And then I would certainly think that if we're going to be doing the reviews, one of the questions that Chris brought up is certainly when we're selecting the applicant to award, if somebody's putting more than 50% in, those are weights that we can utilize to help make our decision on who we select to award these. And I think you're also right that it's not a ton of money to affect a whole bunch of properties. But do we envision, well, it kind of goes with the other one, when we set this funding, we need to look at, do we see this progressing to each of the other corridors that are within the districts as we go? So we're doing the streetscape for downtown right now, and then when we move on to the next one that'll be on the south corridor, when we'll be on the north corridor, then we'll do facade improvements that track along with this. Is that, so why are we picking this area now and the money is, and the next time it'll track with the next project? Is that what we envision?
Well, I think we should clarify that. So that's this point here. I have suggested that it include all of Carson Street, which includes South Carson Street in the district. Yeah, which, you know, that goes beyond just the downtown. But what it doesn't, but the purpose for narrowing it, because the redevelopment district does go, it's also fairly wide east and west. I mean, so the purpose of this program is not to rehabilitate historic houses, for example. I think to keep the intent of the commercial facade improvement program, it's limited to these areas. So that's the purpose for limiting it at all. But it wasn't. But I'm not. I haven't suggested limiting it, excluding South Carson Street in the district at this point. And then will it go to future, like going North Carson Street? That's not in the redevelopment district, and these are redevelopment funds. So perhaps there's another source of funding to do that, but probably not a redevelopment project.
So let me clarify, and so the public can understand here, because you're saying it has to be in a redevelopment district and on. So maybe the question that I'm having is, who are you excluding? Is it, nothing's being excluded, right? If you're in a redevelopment district, you're eligible?
The redevelopment area district's bigger than the Carson Street corridor.
Well,
That's got to include both there.
that's what I'm trying to get to. We are trying to exclude
has to be.
properties. Who are we excluding?
People in the redevelopment district not on these streets. Want me to pull up a map?
Yeah, I think it would be, I just want it to be clear to everybody what we're looking to do.
Well, if you look on page 35 and 36 of your entire, it's the last 2 pages of your packet, have the redevelopment area 1 and area 2 districts.
And what you're saying, Lee, is that nothing outside those districts is going to be allowed, or there is?
Well, these redevelopment funds are not for facade improvement programs outside the district.
Okay.
But we're not including the entire districts.
Right, yes.
And that's
Correct.
the discussion point I'm trying to make here, is that we know whether or not we want to say anyone within redevelopment district 1 or 2 can apply, or do we want to restrict it to the streets that are listed, and what our rationale is and what we're working on.
Right. So as I said, just from my perspective, perfectly fine, discuss if you want to change it. And again, my rationale of this is to go to the very purpose that I believe it was included in the priority program, which was take the next step to the downtown city improvements and fix up the buildings that had been pointed out kind of throughout the downtown design process as needing help. And again, protecting surrounding property owners and protecting the city investment in that infrastructure by improving the buildings in that area. Again, I think that's the rationale for limiting it to that area in South and Carson Street, at least at first, and see how the program goes. And at least give them the first crack at the money, I think, is what I'm saying. And then this can be revisited every year as to whether or not we want to expand it in area.
Yeah, when you get back, I had some questions about where we actually on page 4, where it talks about area limitations. And I think you were pretty specific there. First, I didn't understand the William Street thing, and so I thought that was defining the north end of the area, and so I was going to have asked to include to Fifth Street, because I thought we were only doing downtown, but I do see where you say areas 1 and 2, and you say only properties along Carson Street, Curry Street, and the streets in between those two. So that's pretty well defined. And then down William Street to, we need to say to Lomp or something, if we all agree that we want to include all of that. I guess my opinion would be, I think we stop with that area and not even do part area 2 at this point. I don't know that we have enough funds, and our focus now is for the downtown and really making it the attraction. And then when we finally start moving to those areas, then maybe either do a project, a specific plan for those, or then expand this one. That would just be my thoughts. But I think otherwise we've pretty well defined. It's Curry Street, Carson Street, and the streets in between those from Williams South, so I'm not sure. I'd be offended if I was on the north end of town and we aren't including the north if we're going to include the car dealerships. The south, District 2.
So maybe, just as a thought, why wouldn't we just make it everything in redevelopment District 1 and 2, and then we use the weighting and our rationale when we select the candidates that win the award based on, can we get a whole block taken care of because 4 property owners came in?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're limiting our own selves by not seeing what those areas even come up with. And you're going to be looking at the amount of their project. I mean, I think there's a lot of work when we select the actual applicants anyway, and what if you don't even get enough applicants and you could have done a great project on William Street? So it's just a discussion I think we need to have, is if we also open up the first one, and it's just a thought, it may give us an idea of how much is out there that would like to participate in future programs too. It might give us an idea of what to budget for the future if we had information of everybody.
Will you give me an example of what your concern is, Lori? Will you give me an example of a business that's not on Carson or Curry Street that would like to take advantage of what we're trying to do?
So I heard one earlier, and I have not talked to this business, so don't anybody jump. But let's look at the box store on Williams Street. It's actually going to be Plaza, not Carson Street, because they don't have a frontage on Carson, but that particular facade could use a nice potential paint job or some awnings and, right, or fall.
My understanding would be that they would fall in there from William Street to Curry Street East.
Well, yeah, that would happen because that store actually happens to have frontage on William Street, so it would qualify. But so another way to expand it, I just thought of something else for your discussion. Another way to kind of say this, it would expand it from mine, but to say any commercial property within the redevelopment districts, so it excludes the residential properties. So then we don't get into, well, you're not on this street, you're around the corner from this street, and so that might be another. Okay.
Okay. Then somebody 2 streets back is going to say, well, mine's commercial, unless we still limit it to, it has to border on one of those, so that if the street address is actually like off of Plaza or Fall, but the end of the lot is borders on Williams, then that would be included, that would be acceptable. So as long as one property line borders the Williams, Curry, Carson.
That for me is what I go back to, and what the intent of this program is exactly that, is to take those high traffic areas Carson Streets or Curry Streets, those side streets that you can visibly see off of Carson Street, and change those. I'm not opposed to redevelopment District 2 having that. The one thing I would say is that if you're already getting tax incentives from the city, that you're not eligible for the facade program. If you're any redevelopment district, 2 or 1, I don't want double dippers. The other part of that is I really would like to see it stay with high traffic areas. The Carson Street, Curry Streets, William Streets will be the areas that this money is going to make the biggest impact, in my opinion. Any other questions? Lee, why don't you give us the presentation for 5.1, please? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, do you want to discuss both, or you want to take action on this? I think it might be good to kind of finalize this, because like the maximum amount and how big an area you're going to expand it will probably inform your discussion about how much money to put into it. So maybe let's conclude this, have public comment, and then conclude with that. Conclude action on this item.
Public comment on item 5.2.
Good evening. For the record, Maurice White. So what you're saying is you have a district wherein you are taxing the people, and in this case, telling the people of those properties, but wait, this $235,000 you're not eligible for. We're not going to consider you being able to access the tax dollars that you're spending. I find that fundamentally wrong. That's not the direction you should go with this redevelopment district, when it was designed to improve the entire district when it was put into effect. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard there was more questions on 5.2.
Yes. Okay, Lee, I've got a question for you. On those redevelopment districts, is there an ad valorem tax or some kind of a tax that those people actually are assessed, something higher than the rest of city? Or did we just say that these were historic districts or redevelopment districts, but is there really any difference in the taxing of those districts?
The properties are not taxed any different. They don't get taxed more, but where the money goes within is different. So I don't know. I don't know if I should go into all the tax increment, but no, an individual property in the redevelopment district pays what based on the assessed value, just like any other project in the city. But how the money gets cut up, redevelopment gets a portion of their property tax, whereas that doesn't happen for properties outside that. The money doesn't come specifically to redevelopment. The pie is the same size. Redevelopment gets a piece from the properties inside the district, but not from outside.
Yeah, so if I can see Mr. White's concern that if you're an establishment off of those streets, and even though you're not paying an increase in taxes because you're in the district, but part of those taxes are specifically set aside for redevelopment, and then redevelopment says you can't use them for redevelopment, I do have some issues with that.
There's been a very short history of anybody in these districts being able to come to the city and get any money from the city for anything, including improvements on their property. So it's not like there was a program that we're taking away, or there was a program that now no longer exists. That was never available. As a property owner on a highly visible street on Curry Street, I would want money in this. From this here to go to improve my Carson Street before I would selfishly want that for my own property. And that's just my personal opinion, and I'm sure that there's other people within these districts that feel the same way.
Going back to what Maurice said a moment ago on the ability for everyone to have access to that fund, and to also piggyback on what you just said, where it hasn't been really offered a whole lot in the past, why not offer it and allow everyone to apply within those redevelopment districts and then pick and choose from there. That way you're not narrowing it down just to those specific areas.
I would just assume if we're going to go down that road with this, and this is the can of worms that it opens up, and if that's the road that we want to go down with this, I personally would be in favor of not allowing having no facade program whatsoever to do that. Having someone who lives in their property being able to do the same thing, or someone who lives in a little nook and corner of the redevelopment district to be able to do that. Well, I'm commercial. I'm zoned commercial. I'm zoned downtown multi-use, so that's a commercial use. I could, whether I live there or not, technically I could come and get redevelopment funds to improve the facade of my home where I live. That's not the intent of this program, and that's just my personal feeling. You know, it's a democracy, but you know, that's my personal feeling on the thing. I would much rather not have money available to the public if that's how we want to use it. Go ahead.
I would make it commercial only, so.
Yeah, just thinking through this, my biggest fear is just not having all this money go out. I think that's would be my number one goal, is to get it out there and get things moving with it. So if we were to put this thought process through that it was applicable to anything in the redevelopment district with commercial, which I totally agree with, the next thought process that I'm having is, well, is someone going to take, for example, and Lee, you hopefully you can help me, for example, the Jiffy Lube that used to be down by Custom Truck and is kind of outside of the downtown area, I believe it's closed now. What if somebody wanted to open that up and ask for some of this funding? What are our thoughts about a business like that? Is that something that meets this program? Is that something that we would divert funds away from the downtown enhancements? I would just, ultimately, my number one goal with this would be to make sure the money goes out.
And I think I think it just brings together, we still, if we're agreeing to the approval process, all of the discussion we're having here, if we got more applications, gosh, wouldn't that be nice that people were going to invest in their businesses and actually came to get it? We will use rationale to determine who gets funding, and certainly you can determine, for you, Garrett, priority will be given to these types of property improvements. But I'm with Chris that I hate to not give any money out because we limited it so much, we didn't get sufficient applications, and we could have done a good project. So,
you know, if
in either way.
Again, if there was a real example of that, rather than just trying to muddy the issue, in my opinion, if there was a real example of someone not being able to use this and that was a real conflict to them, that would be one thing. Yeah, but there's not. Yeah, the one example that was given falls within this district and would be able to use it. I think that there's being an issue made out of it where there doesn't have to be, and you open up more issues by allowing that. Downtown multi-use is still a commercial use. I mean, that's still a commercial use. I'm still going to be able to go and be able to file for that, whether I live there or I don't, because of that zoning. It's a commercial use. I can do everything besides the casino, pretty much. I mean, that's the kind of zoning that you have. So that's my side. That's my thoughts on it.
Under your scenario, you can apply now, then, even under this one.
Mm-hmm.
So you still could. It's up to us, though, in the grading of the applications to give weight to the projects that we think are of higher
But it's different to have those properties on Curry Street, be able to say that I could. You're trying to open it up to the whole district where there's little side streets and little city blocks where they shouldn't have money for a facade improvement program, in my opinion. That's not what the intent of this program was for. It was for high traffic areas to improve Carson Street was what this was for. Carson Street specifically, I'd be okay with taking away Curry Street and the side streets and saying Carson Street only.
Just a
Carson?
Court Carson. Quick question. For point of clarification, who is it that decides whether or not you're eligible for facade improvement? I mean, who's dictating this facade is eligible for improvement and this facade, you're already improved enough, you don't need to improve that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really not addressed. I think in there right now, I think it's just kind of assumed if somebody's willing to put up $25,000 of their own money and wants for a $50,000 project, that there must be some, I guess it's kind of assumed they wouldn't do that to a brand-new facade that's already there, but, yeah. You know what, and I did see, so a way to address that, I saw that, I haven't included it anywhere in here, but, I saw one of them, or two of them, that said, you're not, if it's been done, if it's new within the last 5 years, you're not eligible, something like that, so that, I think 5 years, I don't know what 5 years is, but.
And that's the building age within the last 5 years?
It was.
Or remodels?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but if the building's been built within the last 5 years, it's not eligible. I think that was the only limitation I saw on that. But otherwise, I would assume somebody's not putting in that much money in a facade that already suits them or is, complete.
And Lori, just real quick, while it's on the top of my mind, you talk about the other boards and us being able to be able to go through them, and you're right about that. My only fear is that the next board after us maybe has a different idea of how that should look or how that should be. So if we don't have a real set in stone, this is what we want to do, and here's our real true intent of what we want this program to be, with good, strong guidelines, I'm fearful that the next board may look at it differently than we have.
And I don't have a problem with that going down the road. Initially, see, that's why I'm kind of more in favor of limiting it to District 1 for the first, let's put it out there, pilot program, whatever, call it so many years, so it works in conjunction with the street redevelopment. Then, if it starts working, we might want to look at is it Roop, that's where all the motels are, just behind the Nugget? To me, that's an eyesore too, and it's going to start getting more traffic down in the future, diverted off of Carson Street. And so maybe they aren't included the first years, but at some point, I think we need to then start opening it up, because we hopefully will have satisfied our wants or needs downtown right on Carson, that everything will have been kind of brought up, and there won't be that need for monies there. And so rather than stop the program, then we start expanding it out to some of the additional streets that, and further south. The other thing, because I read the Greenville one, and, you can make this thing really complex. And in Greenville, it's like, well, if the building was used for this kind of business before, and you're now changing the type of business, which is going to require new signage for the new business, that sign isn't included. But if it's an existing one that just wants to upgrade to the new standard of signage, it is included, and this whole thing gets pretty complex. And I think that personally that the property owner, and for sure that the property owner has to sign off on this, because I think where we failed on the first redevelopment funds was that a business could borrow them to do interior improvements. The business went out. We never saw our money come back to be reinvested. And I wouldn't have a problem if there was, I don't think we want to have all of the money repaid, but let's say we do a 20% over 5 years if the building is sold, so that, and this probably isn't a situation that would happen on Carson Street. Somebody just goes in to buy a commercial building to flip it. But if I have a building down there, I borrow that money just long enough to bring it up, improve the value of that, and then I go sell it. I think in that situation, it should be paid back because he's going to recover his costs in the new value of that building. And so we could do 20% 1 year, 40% 2 year, and it'd go out at least 5 years. He has to hold it 5 years to get all 100% of that money. Just my thought on that one.
That certainly makes sense what you're saying, and I thought about that too. As far as property owners, yes, for sure, that no doubt, no way a tenant gets to play with this money. It's all property owners, and I think that's what is actually said in here. I think that's already been taken care of. My only fear of doing what you just mentioned, Craig, with making a payback, I think you get some people who won't take advantage of the program because of that. And maybe that's an okay thing and we'll have enough people and it's no big deal. But maybe that's the difference between having the money used and the money not used. So I'm open for discussion on that.
Okay. Let's say there's a current building for sale down there. And let's say that it's been sitting for a while. That could mean that either they're asking too much, or it's not desirable for any other type of business. Something's going on for a building to sit for a length of period. We come out with this program, and immediately that owner who already has it on the market comes and borrows money just to redo it, and now he can sell it because it's more enticing. I have a problem with that unless it gets repaid. So that's...
I get that. At the end of the day, whether he made a profit on that or not, or helped him sell it faster, the goal of the program is to improve the facade. And I think, especially if it sells, it definitely would improve that facade. I'd be okay with the short term. So a 1 year. So you have to hold it for 1 year. If you sell it in that 1 year, you got to pay back 25% or 50% of whatever we come up with. But a 5 year, I think, would be too long. A 1 year period, I would be open to looking at.
Okay. So I guess in the worst case scenario, we're doing 25,000 as our max. And if you go out 5 years, he sells it 4 years, he only has to repay 5. And it's not like it's a killer for the deal or for him. But I understand what you're saying, that yes, the whole plan, the whole design of the plan is to bring up the downtown, the face of downtown, and so we want to encourage everybody to take advantage of it and bring their building up. I just don't want them to, I guess, take advantage of it just to benefit themselves, or it's like you said, it wouldn't only benefit them, it'd still be benefiting the community, but I think it's kind of pretty much, it throws it maybe 80-20 or something, really. So I would think whether it's 1 year or 2 years, if we can't agree on 5, if it's at least 1 or 2 years, some kind of a repayment.
What do you guys think?
I could live with the year, because that's the quick converter that we're trying to avoid, but I do think it would still benefit the entire community because it is facade. But I could understand wanting to put a 1 year. If you have it less than a year, you owe the money back. So I could live with a year, but 5 years is too long to encumber properties and track them and have staff tracking whether they held it long enough, and do they owe us back any money on this, where 1 year is a pretty easy implementation, but I could live with a year.
I agree. And I think that if the goal there is to obviously improve the district, improve the area, improve the facade in the first place, then you're accomplishing that goal to a certain end anyway. So I think a year is good.
Yeah, see, this came from a standpoint of, we already, I believe there's a number of people in this town, I don't know if it's 50-50, 40-60, that has heartburn with the tax in itself just to do the street. And now we're turning around and we're going to use more monies to bring those buildings up just because they're on that street. You know, I can see where the public just going, how much are you going to give those people down there? You know, you're already redoing the street for them. That should be enough incentive for them to have the desire to bring their own building up. I would hope that somebody that buys a building that may be distressed or that would be one of his first things, would be to renovate it, bring it up to code, you know, so that he can have a desirable business in it, you know, and invest in it since he's going to be new owner. You know, that would be part of his budget would be to bring that building up, you would think, you know, so.
Maybe we could look at each section of this and see if we, which pieces we have an agreement on, like we could, does everybody agree the maximum grant should be 25,000? Maybe we can take section by section, so then we could formulate a motion.
Fair
And
enough.
So, we did that.
with what we got on the screen right here, sorry about that, with what we got on the screen right here, why don't we just go through and we'll hit the first bullet point. Court, we'll start with you and we'll work our way down this end.
Oh, more public comment.
Oh,
Can I make a comment?
you betcha, please, come on up.
I'm not a shop owner in town. My name's David Will. I'm just a citizen here in town. But one thing I think would be nice in the downtown district is you have this hodgepodge of looks, appearances through all the buildings. It'd be nice to have them all linked together somehow. Maybe just their mailbox looks the same, or the same color, or their number on their building is exactly the same color. So they're all linked together somehow, because right now they're not. You know, when you walk down the street, it's this business, this business, business. It's almost like you're going to a different town at every shop. And I just think it'd be nice is that when the outsiders, you know, from every state in the union come in and they see something there that links them all together. That's my thought.
Thank you, Dave, appreciate that. If Ronnie was here, I'd let her go on what she wants that theme to be. But for time's sake, we'll keep going. For the first one, maximum funding per parcel. Right now it's at 25. How do we feel about that? And we'll start down here and work our way down. Go ahead, Court.
Okay, well, I actually can't answer to how I feel on that because I don't know what the maximum total is going to be. If it's 25 per parcel and we have 100 people doing this, that's one figure. If we have 50 people doing it, it's another figure. So we don't even know how much money is out there to do this in the first place. So I can't really
That was the
answer
other
that.
item for
I
budget.
know, but we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. So I don't know if that's
Okay.
a good amount for me or not.
Then let's finish with questions on this whole agenda item 5.2, and then let's get on to item 5.1. We're going to have to take action on 5.2 before we go to 5.1, and then we can have this discussion with item 5.1. Is that okay? Is that
You don't have to take action. You can table 5.2, you can table it, go to 5.1,
come back.
and then take action on 5.1, and then come back to 5.2, just as long as you let everybody know what you're doing.
fair enough? Okay.
So I might suggest the place to start is how broad are you going to open this up? Because I think that's going to have a big impact on the total, the maximum per parcel, but also then the total one. But I think even within this item, I think, because I would, if you're trying to save money, if you're opening it up to any property in the whole redevelopment district, then somebody's going to, and I don't think we're going there. I think we're at least to the commercial properties, but somebody's going to flip a house and want to redo the outside and say they're doing right. Okay, I think we're past that. But yeah, but even down to where if we're going to limit it to downtown, I think if this were just downtown, I'm not sure and what we're really looking at, so the recommendation, which is in the packet, is $125,000 this year, another $50,000 the following year. In reality, that's $175,000 available through this cycle because that's after July 1st, and at this point, we're there. We're there already. So if this were just downtown properties, I'm not sure it could round up in the next month and a half that much reinvestment. But I think over the next year, going to the next year, I think that's not totally unreasonable. If you could include South Carson Street and some of there's some old buildings we can think of where new property owners are moving in and doing new development. So then it's probably a reasonable amount. And again, this is just going to be the first round, see what we get, and we can adjust the numbers later. But I will say, because you're concerned about the budget, I think there actually is. There are redevelopment funds available to be a bit flexible in that amount, either way. So
let's talk about the permitted areas then. Let's finish that conversation. That will help us with our further conversation. Do we want it to be just redevelopment District 1, which is the downtown, and that whole area? Do we want it to be what's right here, just Carson Street, Curry Street, the side streets, and that William Street corridor, basically just past the pavilion, where Mills Park is at? Or do we want to open it up to both redevelopment District 1 and 2, the whole areas, or just Carson and Curry Streets and redevelopment District 1 and 2? So how do we feel about that? Let's talk about that.
I go back to what Lori had commented on earlier, which was that there could be a potential project, maybe not directly in the downtown district, that would be worthy of consideration, and we would potentially artificially limit that if we didn't open it up to the entire redevelopment District 1 and 2. However, I also agree with the ability for us as the Citizens Committee to and analyze the potential projects and pick from the ones that make the most sense. And so if we can do both of those, I think it hits the target.
Chris, I agree. I think there's a case in point right now. Capitol Ford's redoing their facade, which was grossly outdated. And I think if there's something that's along the Carson Curry corridor and it's something that we approve in either of the redevelopment districts, I think that's something that we should consider.
I do too. And I do agree. I don't want Garrett to think I actually don't agree with the overall emphasis of what you'll see this committee voting on. I just don't want to have a blinder on for a project that we all would have gone, oh my gosh, we should have considered that, because I don't think we know everything that every business would potentially do. And I just hate to limit that and find out there was really a great project that we should have participated in. But I do agree with you that you'll probably see emphasis in this area.
Craig, anything you want to add?
Well, I guess my concern then is that we're excluding North Carson Street because it's not in a redevelopment district. Pardon?
We can't fund that. I mean, this money is redevelopment dollars, and we have long ago made that, that's the way it goes. These are redevelopment dollars, and we have to spend the dollars appropriately.
And something we could bring up on a future agenda item down the road, but nothing we can do about that on this agenda item today.
No, I'm not wholeheartly in favor of District 2 at this point, because we are going to focus on that with the 18% or the 1.5%, whatever our tax thing was, in the coming future, and so we could do a program at that time. We're only talking a couple of years down the road.
So you're saying to do the first round as redevelopment 1, and then after the improvements happen in the corridor for redevelopment 2, we would then channel this money to 2. Is that? So this one, we start with 1. I'm okay with that, because we are following along with other dollars that the city is doing, and you're trying to bring a whole area of redevelopment at the same time. So I don't have a problem with saying redevelopment is all of that, Lee? All of that's in 1, correct? Yes, Carson, Curry, all of that's in redevelopment 1.
Yeah, you just
No,
have
no,
to,
no.
Oh, something's in 2?
No, Carson Street is 1 and 2.
Oh, if you're going to go all the way down? But where couldn't we stop at Williams? Is that all in 1, though? And then next time, we'd pick the other half of Curry Street with District 2. I mean,
District 1 goes from, let's see, where's Carson Street? Flashman, basically, down to the end of the shopping center is District 1. So that,
Yeah, redevelopment District 2 doesn't pick up till basically where Fairview is, where Stewart hits Carson Street, just past the mall. So, and then redevelopment District 1,
he's got a good map with color.
if I can get it to go back up.
yeah, stops at Stewart. Stops at Stewart.
Yeah, stops right there at Little Lane on Stewart and goes a little further, where it covers the Carson Mall, basically. Okay, so what Craig, you're saying, just to clarify, redevelopment District 1, the whole district?
Commercial only.
Commercial only?
Commercial only.
Okay.
And unfortunately, you've got some establishments on the other side of Carson Street adjacent west of the mall that I think could benefit by this program. You got a tile shop, you got batteries, plus, there's an old Burger King, all of those are excluded, unfortunately, because we drew the line down the center of the street. And so we didn't step back at least to Curry there, and there's some possible potential there. But if we start deviating from the redevelopment district, then you open up a can of worms.
I agree with that, and my concern with redevelopment District 2, I'm okay with including both. That doesn't bother me either way. But just know if there's a business that's getting tax incentives already, they can't take advantage of this. That would be my only caveat with that.
Tax incentive.
But I think that's a good place to start. I'm okay with that. Any other comments and discussions we want to talk about for the permitted areas for this program? Do you want to do that for, or you're talking a year or 2 years? What's your time frame you're thinking about?
What was your consensus on the area limit?
This is what we're talking
about.
See if we want to give a year, like the first 2 years, we'll do District 1, commercial only. And then when the next set of the project is done, and we then transfer the money to District 2? Is
I
that
think Lee's asking all District 1 or just District?
commercial only?
So you're trying to plan out, I would suggest you
kinda-
don't need to do that, because I think you're going to see once we get the applications, you're going to say, we need to expand.
More?
Once we get the first round of applications,
Remote
you're going to
answer.
figure out and give us direction to change it before next year. I wouldn't try to solve that, what's happening 2 years from now.
No, I think
right
it's
now.
just a general discussion to.
Right, but it is,
To have a
what is
rationale
this?
while why are we
It's not that you can't
doing
change it,
this?
it's going to be,
Right.
what do we
But
want to do this year?
Why are we picking as part of our rationale as to what we're, thought process is?
So staff wants it, you want us to have both redevelopment districts starting up front?
Well, I think you're, yeah, I think that's the recommendation. I think based on, and I agree, I think it can be used down on South Carson Street, and I think it realistically could be used on South Carson Street in redevelopment area too. So the suggestion is to include it. Now, now again, I've kind of focused on Carson Street and Curry Street, and if, it may include a few more properties that aren't on those streets if it's all commercial areas, but that's up to you if that's fine.
So all of 1 and 2, commercial only, can't be a building that's 5 years, right? Has to be older than 5 years old. They have to at least own it for a year. These are the types of issues we're discussing. Okay.
And not currently
And can't
getting
have a tax
incentives.
incentive.
Not currently getting.
Can't currently have a tax incentive. I like that too.
Yeah.
So let's table item 5.2 so we can go on to item 5.1. And,
Helps them know what we're doing now.
and Lee, I'll let you take it away.
Still writing down for the last one. Got no, commercial properties in the redevelopment areas, no current tax incentives. The other, what was,
Years old.
and five, oh, yeah.
5 years old.
And
And-
can't sell it within a year.
Correct. Well, you
Well, if you
can,
do-
you got to pay it back.
You gotta pay it back.
Full payback, right?
Right.
Full payback, correct? Okay.
Okay, item 5.1 is action. Let me read the item. What is it, action? It's action to make recommendations to the Redevelopment Authority regarding allocations of redevelopment undesignated infrastructure funds for fiscal year 2015-16, that's our current fiscal year, and estimating future allocations for the following 4 years to implement redevelopment objectives as prioritized by the Redevelopment Authority on October 15th, 2015. So as you'll recall, last year, we went through 2 or 3 meetings discussing and establishing priorities. RAC made recommendations to the board. Ultimately, in October, they came up with the activity, I'll call them activity priorities, that are different projects or programs to implement the goals, and those are listed up there on the table, and they're ordered in priority. So the purpose of this item, and I think this is something that we've talked about doing for quite a while with RAC as we've gone over budget presentations every year for the last few years, is really, so what's the plan going into the future? Well, this is kind of an attempt to start, it's a sort of a capital improvement program for, light capital improvement program, but it's kind of like that. We're looking out at our projected revenues over the next 5 years and what we can spend and allocate to different programs. And of course, that's on a rolling calendar basis. You're looking at it again every year for the next 5 years and rolling funds forward and reestablishing. But you want to have a plan and see where you're going and see what's out there ahead. So just going, so that's the purpose of this table, and going down the priorities as a reminder. The first priority was the completion of the east-west streets between Carson Street and Curry Streets within the downtown area. That's described a little bit in more detail in the memo, but it's basically the Curry Street and Carson Street projects literally stick to those streets and aren't doing any sidewalk improvements to connect them. So this would do those sidewalks connections at about $100,000 per street. And it's recommend, and that's not going to start till 2018, 2017-18. Actually, some of Curry Street now that I understand they are going to try to start that as soon as the session is over in 2017, when that frees up, that can be moved up because the city has the funds sitting and waiting to do that. So that might actually occur a little bit sooner than originally planned. So let me go down the list before I get into the kind of the recommended funding. Going down the priorities, the second priority was purchasing downtown equipment and infrastructure to facilitate special events. I've split out kind of a separate one there that we can discuss about supporting street closures for special events, which is not literally buying things, but supporting street closures to help so that the events don't have to pay for that. The third priority was the downtown facade improvement program, which we're just talking about. Fourth is continue with special event funding. Fifth, assist in undergrounding and utility extensions for new development. Sixth was assist in the William Street Corridor project. That's something that wasn't discussed previously at RAC. It came up at the Board of Supervisors meeting and was given a priority right there. And the seventh would be, in kind of the last two, seventh and eighth, purchase property for future redevelopment and provide directional signage throughout the downtown. So those are lower priorities. You can see there's not any funding recommended going out. looking at this table generally, I think is pretty self-explanatory. You know, you kind of go down vertically within any given fiscal year about how much the allocation is for each activity with the total down below. We have an estimated, based on budgeting projections, an estimated total available funds, and you have a reserve and undesignated. So you'll see kind of going out in this 5-year projection, there's about 1.6 million in recommended or suggested allocation of a $2.4 million revenue. And so there's over $800,000 in unreserved and allocated. So that's kind of where, in the long run, there's a little bit of room to play with certain ones. There's also, you know, we would expect, you know, there's also some safety factor in there. This assumes some modest continued property value growth and revenues. But also we know that things come up, and within 5 years, and other projects come up that might change priorities. So having some continuing to have some reserve and undesignated is not a bad idea. So I mentioned the east-west streets at about $100,000 a pop starting in per street, per block, starting in 2017-18. So purchasing downtown equipment, and this is something that needs to be explored further in a little more detail as to what that is, but that's generally going to be the purchase of tables, chairs, tents. People have suggested generators, although the need for those are going away with the new project, so I got to kind of explore that. What else can I think has been suggested? You know, it might be special event garbage cans. There's a lot of garbage cans that need to be taken out for special events and hauled off beyond what we have. So I've talked to some about that. I need to still talk to some people about what exactly those expenditures need to be, and I think we need to have a process to review those expenditures before those goes out, and I would agree with that. 2A, so kind of in that same category of supporting downtown special events, this is a little bit bigger discussion having to do with downtown special events, but the kind of the summary is that currently the special event applicants are required to pay for all street closure related expenses. That doesn't always happen that way, and it hasn't, but it's been inconsistent. But that's what the regulation says, and certainly there's certain events have had to pay that expense. So rather, the suggestion is that, and I've talked to Public Works, they've done it before, they know how much it is per event. It's a time materials thing. If they spend, it would cost about $25,000 a year for them to do the street closures. They recommend that rather than handing out the barricades to the events every time and having them do it, it's just we'll just do it. Let's just reimburse it. We'll do what we need to do and get the street closures done so that the events don't have to worry about that. And we do it right, and we do it in accordance with the traffic laws and all of that stuff. So that's what that expenditure is. It's $15,000 to get us through June this year. That's just suggested as a budget item, and then it's estimated at $25,000 per year going out. The facade improvement program, again, $125,000 is kind of a number thrown out there. I could think there's probably projects that, I could see about half of that, and kind of what's known out there I think legitimately that we'll see applications for at least about half of that I would anticipate. And like I said, the $50,000 into the next fiscal year is really starting July 1st of this year. So effectively in this kind of round, we're going to, it's a pretty large allocation actually. And then, maybe my estimates for years going out are a little low at $20,000 if it is successful. I think we needed, I kind of assume with the kind of limited scope of it that some of what's allocated in this first year and second year would continue to roll forward. But again, kind of see after 1 year, and you'll be having this discussion next year at this time and seeing if we need to adjust any of these numbers. Continuous special event funding. So this kind of going out correlates with number 2, and spending some money each year. So, and again, up to number 2, I kind of front-loaded in the first year, having some money available to purchase things, but I don't think ongoing, we won't need to do that every year, so it's a lower number. But that coincides with the special event and reduced funding each year, which we've heard through the budget for the last 2 or 3 budget cycles, but we've continued to fund special events at $65,000. So the suggestion is to start to do what RAC and the Redevelopment Authority have said they want to do and start reducing that funding directly to special events and provide the support elsewhere. And then number 5 on there is utility extensions. You know, that's one where I can think of a property in the downtown that has a problem going through it with utility lines going right through the middle of it that will need to be, but there's no imminent project on it. $20,000 would have covered 50% of the cost of a water line relocation and some other example in the past of somebody that's come. So again, that's just kind of a number that's out there that we could carry forward. I don't know of any imminent demand for this, for that line on it, but it's something that we could provide a little bit for. And so when those events come up, we have something there to allocate. And then finally, the William Street project, again, allocating something starting in 2017-18, which is the scheduled time period for it to start, but we really have to see at what time. And again, with that number, it's just based on what's available and kind of comparing it to what's being put into some of the other side streets there. But certainly, that's just kind of a round number that I put in there, and you can discuss it. So that's kind of how that works. We can play with the numbers live on here to make a recommendation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on any of these specific items.
So yeah, Lee will let you play with the numbers as we kind of have this discussion and go through it. I'm going to open it up to you guys for questions to Lee, and let's start there.
Question. Lee, just so I can understand the spreadsheet, and I'm sorry I didn't get this question to you earlier in the day so that you could potentially double-check something. If I were to look in the 2015-16 column, reserve undesignated indicates 121,218. Is that then carried forward into 17, so it's part of the 271 that's left, or each year is discrete?
Yeah, thank you. So each year is discrete. So the total of the 5-year carryover is in the lower right-hand corner there. So if we're looking at a 5-year budget, then it's 828 undesignated.
I just needed to make sure it's discrete because we have 1 year that's 2,000. So if I spent more, I didn't want to go negative. Get a surprise, right? Okay. So.
Go ahead. And also, Lee, wasn't there some new project or something, a new source that received funding from redevelopment recently that if we had looked at the budget more recently, it would show that as being a negative to the current whole scheme? I thought there was something new that popped in that we didn't talk about at redevelopment. Could be wrong.
These are these are based on the latest projections and latest available. So actually, the estimated available as of the augmentation that went to the Board of Supervisors within the last month increased these numbers, and so these reflect the latest budget augmentations to the redevelopment budget. Which, yeah, are you thinking epic events? There was something that was put in the budget for a special event that's a light item, but this reflects, as of today, any budgeted items are not in this undesignated.
Yeah, I think my question was more the list of projects currently receiving funds from redevelopment. I thought there was a new one that came in from the city manager or something, but.
Yeah, I think you're referring to number 6, which was the William Street Corridor project that we never had a chance to talk about. The Board of Supervisors put that in there.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You betcha. Great.
So Lee, with the augmentation that the board approved the other day, is that where, because I thought 2015-16 was already spent, that any reserves we had went to 3rd Street and we were pretty flush at the end of this year. So, because we've got the 65,000 in there, which we already approved last spring for all of the events for this year, and whatever was left over, we allocated, was transferred to the 3rd Street.
This is additional money.
And where did that additional money come from?
Increased taxes. Taxes above the original projected budget that were received. So
Yeah,
these
so
are
actually-
real money.
Yeah, so actually a little bit of timing. So the actually the 3rd Street allocation for this year was actually made when we didn't actually know the number in 2014. So it was an estimate of what, it was allocating an estimate of what would be available in 2015, 16, and more ended up being available, which has been sitting there even before the augmentation. And then there was the augmentation that adds to that. And this number also, you know, in your budget projection, this 371,000, 371,000 includes the 65,000. It includes that, whereas the budget, in the other budget projection, that special event stuff was separated out in 65,000 separately. So it's added in there too. So it's, the increase is more like 300,000, not 370.
Okay, I didn't realize we were doing that well in the city, because this looked like the part that was at the bottom, because all of our administrative costs, salaries and all that stuff, it was up above, and then we had, this is what we actually had to spend on events and things. And at that point, the reserve was what we allocated to 3rd Street. So it appears then that the city is doing quite a bit better than we had projected in tax revenues.
And if you go back to the 5-year projections, when we were having the discussions on the priorities, there was some reserve, there was some in there. And it's bigger now after the augmentations, which is carryover from prior years and increased property tax.
Well, and not to mention that last year, we began defunding some administrative expenses that we charged that we no longer charge. So we don't expense all of the staffing that we used to. So we also generated some dollars there to be able to do more in redevelopment. So as a board, we moved some other expenses out too, so that we can do.
Perfect. Any more questions?
Do you want comments?
Are we going to discuss this budget
Yeah.
then?
Yeah.
Take public comment.
I guess I have a question with special events for the remainder of the year. If we're only allocating 25,000 for public works and for a full year going forward, and we're a little over halfway through for this year, and most of our events fall in the summer or fall, we've got Taste of Town and all those things, why is that number not more proportionate to the number of months we have left? But
Well, it's just a little safety factor in there, because, yeah, I didn't go to the detailed looking, because I know like Taste of Downtown has fluctuated back between June. They're usually in June, so they are one of the big ones that are beforehand. Yeah, I didn't go to the detail of identifying exactly which events are going to need this and when they occur if it's below July 1st. So there's a little bit of a safety factor in there. But in any case, it's not just giving that amount to Public Works. They do time and materials, they cost everything, and it'll be strictly reimbursement on their actual cost. So it would just not exceed that. So it would likely be less for the rest of this year, based on that.
And you have a calendar, you folks know what events are still coming up, and you know, so I trust you on that. Some of the other things, and then as the other members discuss them, I like this concept of having the city do those kinds of things, the road closure, because I know then they're done right, they're done early enough in the day that, that you don't have bottlenecks right at the last minute. But in all of these cases, well, in item 2 and 2A, where we're going to buy equipment, if that's approved, and we're going to do the road closures, but in our background information, which we'll probably discuss closer here, it doesn't look like there's any mechanism to rent this equipment to the events. Currently, they have to pay for all that stuff themselves. If we purchase that, it's only going to have, whatever the life expectancy of chairs or tables or tents are. I would think that we would at least want some kind of rental. It can be a discount from what they have done previously if they go through a regular rental company. But then we would have funds then to replace that stuff as it wears out or just gets damaged. It gets damaged in the first event for some, unknown reason. But I think we keep saying we want to reduce the amount we give them to, so we did that. We went from 65, we're going down $5,000 a year, but we're going to give them a lot more benefits on the other side. And I think, why are we always just giving everybody everything? Why? There should be some, I think a payback a little bit here to make them responsible for part of it, at least pay a small rental fee or something for this equipment. It's going to cost us to get it out. Where are we going to store it? Do we have cost to store it in here? The labor to pull it out? The labor to pull it out? I just think that we ought to look at the amount of equipment they want and the amount of time it takes us to get it out of storage or the storage or something and have at least a minimal fee.
Yeah, that's a good point. And whether it's actually rental of that, I mean, I tell you, our city departments, it's not free to use city staff to do these things, so there's some time. So if there was some administrative cost, I mean, the answer right now is this program isn't worked out. I'm not prepared to tell you what we're going to buy and how much it's going to be, but it's possible there's private. There's people that are willing to help us do that without charging us. So maybe, if we can figure that out and it doesn't cost the city anything to do it, then I think the intent is that these things are for use in events. I mean, we want to cover, recover costs to the extent that we can, but.
If I remember back to one of our meetings, one of the reasons that the special event funding continues to go down 5,000 each event is part of this was to help get events off the ground too. So it wasn't a sustainable thing where every year it was to help those people as they're getting those events going, to kind of give them a leg up, saying, you can use some chairs or you can use the tables or various things that we're doing to get them going with that event, and then they're supposed to stand on their own for those events. So that's part of how I understood that to be.
Well, and I think the other piece of that people might not realize is they are using Parks and Recreation's tables and chairs. So Rotary goes and gets them from Parks and Recreation, and they're getting worn out, and then Parks and Recreation doesn't have replacement money for those. And the whole issue to be able, it was like all we're doing is moving money from one fund to the other to really pay for special events. And I thought the general discussion that we had is we wanted to encourage special events and even new ones, and that is a major expense, is to do the road closures and the equipment. So if we could have that as part of redevelopment, because we want to encourage lots more events, not just the ones we've been funding, And we're moving away from the number 4 activity and saying we want to do the number 2 type of activity to support everyone that wants to come into the community and start doing events. Because I'm assuming we want more of them. And so that was going to spread it out more. So everyone could use the equipment and everyone could have street closures, and that would just be paid for by redevelopment. So we were moving from handing somebody $3,000 or $4,000. So that was kind of our thought there too.
Okay, so it sounds like, at least from your perspective, number 4, which we discussed, that we need to start weaning the ones that have been out there for 20 years, always getting the same amount, and we had nothing to give to new ones, those funds then that we held back from these grandfathered ones would then start funding new ones. As opposed to doing that, you're suggesting that 4 possibly goes away at some point, and the fact that we're doing the road closures, offering them the equipment, or would we still maybe do some help for brand-new ones? You know, I still think we ought to help some brand-new ones.
Yeah, which is why we reduced it.
Yeah,
because now Section 2 is available for everybody, including new ones. But yes, the number 4 is declining, but for new, something great that comes out there.
While you're on special events, before you go, one of the things when I was thinking about infrastructure to support events, and another one that's come up is movie nights at Third. If there's been a suggestion, and so that's an idea that's out there. But there's other ideas like that might come up to where, and it's a real public event, and people can come down. They do that down in Gardnerville, but where there's it's not somewhere where somebody's charging a fee and getting an entry, but that might be a public, it's that type of infrastructure to support things that help people go down and use the area. So that was another example I just wanted to make sure I mentioned. But not that, again, I think we need a program, before we buy something like that, we need to know, or anything else, that there's a program for managing it and how it goes out, what's the plan. So, but these are just some ideas that are out there.
So I think potentially the 25,000 that you have on line 2 should be moved into the 16-17 year. So that you make a plan, like you said, we get the plan first.
We'll go through these line by line. I just wanted to get general questions out of the way first. Okay, so we'll go line by line. You want us to approve this line by line, correct? Each item? Is that what you're asking of us today?
Yeah, unless if you like it as it is, and it's one sweeping motion, but
No,
no, we'll go through it and change it, and in the end, then we'll adopt it as you're looking at, as you see it up there, so I give it to the recorder. Yeah, that's where you want to get. Go line by line, make your changes, and when you make a motion to approve it like that, then I can give a copy of that to the recorder.
Okay, so on item number 1, and let's try to keep
You want to have public comment before you start making decisions on any?
We're not making any decisions, we're just having discussion.
Okay.
So we'll have public comment after that. Let's try to keep the comment per each item, and if you want, I'll open up public comment to each item. So number 1, east-west downtown street improvements to match the Carson Curry street improvements. I take it there's probably, there's not much room to work there. Those are probably pretty set as far as those numbers go.
Those are rough engineer's cost estimates at this point. That would be certainly something, by, let's see, where are we? So we're in this budget cycle. By the time we get to the budget, yeah, it would be this time next year, we would have a firmer number for what they would consider doing in 2017-18.
Okay. And
probably beyond that, because they'll be in, yeah.
Okay, so I'd be okay with just keeping those numbers how they are? Everyone okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
I'm in general, and I think
just for line 1.
I think we need that flexibility, because I would love to see where, if we're doing a large project, or there's a large project happening in town that would benefit prioritizing the streets to where they coincide with a major project. And I'm just thinking the parking lot at the Nugget, when they finally get ready to do theirs, everything's going to be torn up there, maybe that's the year, not knowing when that is, we need to be able to slide this a little bit one way or the other and say, okay, they probably want to move curb, driveways and stuff anyway, rather than do those streets first and then they come along and we tear it up again. Try to time those with some, at least major events that we know are happening. So I'd like to make sure we just have some flexibility there,
Any other discussion on item 1? Okay. No public comment? Okay. Item number 2, purchase downtown equipment and infrastructure to facilitate special events. So discussion on item number 2.
Yeah.
I would like to move the 25,000 from the 15-16 into the 16-17, because I'd like them to bring us back the plan, and here we are in February already. So to expense it by June 30th, are you thinking you're a month away and have a plan, or?
Well,
Well, that's what I'm saying.
you could always carry it forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would suggest if you're just pushing it forward, to leave it there and it'll be carried forward.
No, then it
And-
drops to undesignated. You're
Well,
saying,
it doesn't have to. Because when you do a budget, right.
so
okay.
I mean, do you think?
Because
do you have any of it
I think there could be, because events,
5,000?
if Third Street's going to be done in June of this year, which I don't know if that's exactly the schedule, that's what I think. So, but we may want to buy stuff before July 1st. And I don't know that it's, and we could potentially get to you with that. I'm not promising that we will, but it's possible. So would you leave some in there? Or,
I was going to say, do you want to
yeah, I
leave
don't-
5,000 for something that might truly come up that you could buy
10,
before June 30th?
10,
And have the
15.
plan, 10,000? Do you have something
Yeah,
in mind?
I don't know.
Yeah, actually, do I hear
In a little, like for example, I don't know how much tents, right, I don't know how much tents and chairs are, and if we can work that out before then. Yeah, I mean, a standalone outdoor projector set is $10,000 to $15,000, and I'm not saying that's what we would do that, but just to kind of have a ballpark of what some types of things cost. I don't know, how much are tents? How much is one event tent?
My event tent that I use in the parking lot for Oktoberfest is $10,000 to purchase, so. And the chairs and tables that I rent for Camelot are very expensive as well. so.
I'm just looking that, again, I don't think it should be a loose item that just has a budget without a plan and without the rules. What are we going to do? What aren't we going to do with it? And I know that we're working on special events, and this dollar potentially can fit into our whole planning that we're doing. I just don't want to allocate dollars, though, where I really don't have a plan. And this is certainly something I support, but I'm okay with putting 10,000 in there then, so that if there's something really great that comes up and we can have everything done, but you can buy it July 1st and get it.
No, and
Get it
I'm thinking
done.
of the process, and the process for any of these expenditures is, it has to go to the Redevelopment Authority to adopt a resolution.
So by the time.
So if something did come up that went through, they could adopt a resolution and revise that. So
Right.
You're right. At this point, we don't have a plan for that. So.
Right, so I just don't want to recommend stuff that we don't have a plan for. So I'm okay with changing that to 10,000, unless anybody else, that's just my comment. And then, like I said, making the next year 20. And then spell infrastructure right on line 2 if we're going to do this as our adopted one. Sorry.
Lori, I concur with you, because I think that, come our spring budgeting, that'll give us the opportunity, and maybe by then we have the plan, we have a list of what we think are those items, because a projector, boy, I never even thought of that. I'm thinking tables, tents, those kinds of things. And so I think all of a sudden, do we need sound systems? Do we need project? So, and then I think, I'm not sure under the city bylaws where we have to go out and get competitive bids, but I think that might be beneficial, and all of that would take a little bit of time. I don't feel real comfortable just saying we're going to run out with a grocery list and start buying stuff.
Any more discussion on item 2? Okay, let's go, any public comment on item 2? And we're going to go to 2A, special event support, public works street closures. Let's open that up for discussion.
So are we anticipating that this will be on a billing basis or now a billing basis?
Yes,
And I'm okay with
yeah,
that.
I think you stepped out. We won't, this isn't just a shift in funds to
Right.
them. It would be,
That's fine.
they track time and materials, so it would just be on a reimbursement
And
basis.
that'd just be a maximum that we,
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, any further discussion on item 2A? Public comment? Item 3, downtown facade improvement program. We have $125,000 in 2015 and 2016. Keep in mind that in July 1st will be the new fiscal year for 16-17. And so that $50,000 will become a part of that 125, making a total of 175. Which is the number that we're talking about being allocated for the first year of the facade improvement program. Does that make sense? Okay, and let's open that up for discussion.
I was just going to say, will it, or will that fall to undesignated?
That will come together. So, and if there's a way that we need to structure that, that the 125,000 from this year for 15-16 and the 50,000 for 16-17 will be combined together for a total of 175,000, irregardless of whether 125,000 gets used by January 30th of 2016, June 30th,
Right.
2016.
So my goal in this line category, I think we're progressing towards implementing this year, which means kind of, and it's in the table that I provided, which kind of has a summary of kind of how I would intend to process applications, is to take applications by April 15th of this year to bring them to the May RAC meeting. So at which time you can make recommendations on $125,000 plus the $50,000 starting July 1st if we get that many applications. So the answer is yes, if it needs to be carried, at which time you could kind of address that carryover. So I think with that one, we have a point coming up where we can address that.
Yep, I'm good.
Further discussion?
So then the general question is, since we are kind of looking to make it all of the commercial redevelopment, we've got 121,000 in reserve. Where was that magic number? Why not put another 50,000 or so up into the facade program? I'm just trying to say, what was the magic number to put 121,000 in reserve? What's the rationale? Because this year is actually known. I mean, it's really not much of
Right.
an estimate because the tax is already done
Well-
and levied and assessed, so.
You mean 136,000 you said?
Oh, well, you just flipped the number, sorry, let me go up to there, yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, it
Right,
changed
right.
because it's
Never
up there.
mind.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
look at
Oh,
the
yes.
screen
No,
now.
that's
so-
right. I forgot.
I'm like, what? It says 120, never mind.
Yeah.
They're quick. They've already done the Excel spreadsheet change. So why wouldn't we pop another, some more money up into the facade? If our true goal is to make an impact, then let's put some more money into the facade program.
I wouldn't mind seeing a nice round number of 200,000. Throw
Let's see
another
what it looks
25.
like.
I meant just 25,000 more. I'm sorry. So
Actually, I liked that.
a total of 150 in 15-16, and the 50 there.
Yeah, then it's 200,000 for this first round, really, between the two.
And I have a wish list for the other, that's why we'll get to that.
I knew there was another method.
So further discussion on item 3.
I'm not opposed to putting all that money in this year, but I'm not sure if applications go out in April, they hit us on May, we start approving things. Realistically, how many projects are we going to see before July 1 when the budget actually rolls anyway? I don't know where you came up with a number like that. I mean,
Well, the thing is,
as long as it's going to move and we're going to save it, I don't have a problem with that, but I just thought, we're down to 1 month. They'll have June to do something, and realistically, I'm not comfortable yet with when the funds go out. I think it should be reimbursement, not ongoing as the project moves along. We're not talking that much money in anybody's. No.
It's reimbursement, yeah. If I wasn't clear, then getting back to the
Well,
facade
it's
program, it's reimbursement.
but the project doesn't have to be finished before they can start drawing on it.
But for city finance purposes, I think they can't, if it's budgeted for the following year, then they're prohibited from doing anything till the following year. We can't reimburse them for anything they did before July 1st if it's not in this budget. And that's what I'm worried about. So that's why having the bigger pot up front.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I
works
just thought,
to allow, again, yeah, they might not start, I'm not promising there'll be that much starting, but it allows them to start before July 1st if we have the funding available.
And I guess that at least they can start using it for, since we're going to allow them to reimburse design, drawing, that kind of thing. I could see that start happening in June, but I can't see a project actually breaking ground. They'd have to start planning it now, but if they don't know that they're going to have the funds, they may not even say, well, I don't want to take a chance. But I'm okay because we're going to be able to roll it, okay?
I could see someone painting and getting that done in a month.
Yeah.
For Chris, anything you want to add to item 3?
No, I'm comfortable with the increase and with the amount this year.
Public comment on item 3. Okay. So item number 4, continue special event funding.
Already done.
Okay.
Yeah, for this current year, that money has been allocated to events.
And I like the plan you have moving forward of knocking that down, the $5,000 annually. Public comment on item number 5. Item number 6, assist with underground and utility extensions for new development. And that's projected for the next 5 years at $20,000 annually. Let's open that up for discussion.
On this one, Leah, the question comes up again, what do you know of? You mentioned one particular property that has some power lines. Is there anything else you can give us that's kind of an indicator? Is 20,000 high? Is 20,000 low? Is it going to be just a drop in the bucket?
Not quite a drop in the bucket, but yeah, to underground power lines that go through one property, I've been told the number, but it's like $50,000 just for between two poles. It's pretty expensive stuff to relocate when you have to go around. So yeah, it's 20,000 is a good. It could be 50 to 100,000.
Do you want to make that one 25,000 and again a maximum grant of 25,000 for utility? Are we going to do the same rule on utility that it's a 50%?
No, sorry. Yeah, I should be clear on this one. This is allocated to that activity for which which I haven't presented, and we don't have a program to give them at this point.
Yeah.
So we'd have to come through with that. Like I said here, there's a good basis is we had the small business improvement program that's in there and in place, and it talks about the percentage. And if we have the facade improvement program, that's probably a good model as well to use. But that facade improvement program is specific to those funds and not this. And so, again, this is for budget purposes. This isn't allocating any funds to anybody. We'd have to come through and readopt a program and determine what percentage and all, like with the facade improvement program, we'd have to determine that before allocating those funds, which probably won't happen before July 1st of this year, but.
So to be clear, that 20,000 is not what Public Works or what the city needs for projects to, in the downtown redevelopment area, or any redevelopment area?
No, this would be specifically to a new business, redevelopment of a property, or new development on a property that doesn't have waters to it, doesn't have sewer all the way to it, or has some other utility issue that's abnormal and or would request help for extension of utilities.
Okay, yeah, questions?
I was just going to comment that with the wide range of utilities that could be benefiting or I guess, requiring these funds, I would think that 20,000 might be low, especially with what you said with the power lines. So I don't know if we can do anything with it this year, but I would hate to not make available to that some of these businesses, because it's been said before that certain types of businesses don't want to be in downtown because they can't do these things. And so, I mean, like I said, I don't know about 20,000 this year, but I would like to see a number higher than that for this.
So let me provide a little more rationale for, although again it is a fairly random number, but this is one where I would kind of expect you to look at it next year and say, we didn't use that last year, let's carry it forward and make sure the pot's whole for next year, because I don't see anything coming through this year. Yeah, maybe it's 40,000 for next year.
And
then 20,000 going out, because I think it carries forward, and really most properties have water and sewer to them. So this isn't a huge issue, but it comes up, and it could be the difference for some development, but the vast majority of properties have water, sewer, power right to them without these issues. So that's why it's relatively low, because it's not a really big deal. We've seen in the last 5 years, there's one property for a small property, well, commercial property, that had, water and sewer was about 100, 200 feet away, whatever it was. So it's not common.
Okay, just my 2 cents on that particular item. I think that it takes, taking the 30,000-foot view look at this whole thing. I'm in favor of giving the public taxpayer money to improve the facade of their buildings, because that helps everybody. That helps everybody in the community, helps the whole area, the whole nine. When you start getting into utility deals, and I don't think there's enough properties that make that even an issue. I think that's a non-starter. But you go back to the tenant improvement program is basically what we had before, where businesses or property owners were coming to the city, getting taxpayer money to do tenant improvements to their buildings, and the landlord was the one who was reaping the money from the tenant paying it. That's not, I'm not okay with that from a standpoint of using the redevelopment funds to do that. I think there's a better use of funds to do that. So for me, I'd like to see that go away completely and open up that money, but that's just one opinion. And then, if there is a property or a case or two that has a real big problem, I don't know if there's anything that precludes them from coming to us anyways and saying, hey, here's what I'm dealing with in this redevelopment district. Is there something you guys can do to help me, without having set aside a whole nother pot? And same thing with number 7, purchase property for future redevelopment. Redevelopment's not in the real estate business. We don't need to be buying property. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm open for discussion on what you guys think about that. And Lee obviously would like your opinion on that as well.
So my comment with that is just that, number one, this to me is facilitation for making sure that businesses can do business in Carson City rather than reap the benefits. The other thing that I see with this one is that it's diversifying the investments we're making in Carson City, and that's always important, is to diversify and allow that funding to be available for different things. I think that's what I saw in this. Again, maybe if I'm not catching, like what you said, Garrett, that's different, but just helping get utilities right for a new business, or a different business, to me, is valuable.
I thought it was also, we did know of a property that wanted to put the electricity underground, and it was so cost prohibitive, they're not going to develop the property the way all of us would like it developed because it's so expensive to put to remove the poles and put the electricity underground. So I don't want to eliminate the line because it's to move it underground or new development. So I think it's important. I just think we should move the 20,000 to the next year because we won't get any projects this late by the time we get to May. But I think utilities are important, and like I said, I know of that particular Copeland lumber was so cost prohibitive on the power poles that the project couldn't get done.
And I appreciate you struggling with this, because this is another one where without the parameters, you're kind of allocating money and not understanding that, is this a 20% match? Is this 20% of the project cost, or is this 70% of the project cost? Or so you still have the opportunity to look at that. What are the limitations on it? It's not. We're going to have to look at that and determine. I mean, the intent of this is clearly to facilitate new development coming in. And we need to develop a program with the parameters under which that would occur.
You betcha. And again, if there's a special case where it really is prohibitive, I don't know the whole story with Copeland lumber, but at the end of the day, it's all a numbers game. So if the person would sell the property for the number that made it work to put the power pole underground, he has himself a deal. So, and does government play a role in facilitating that? I don't know. I struggle with that question a lot. I like to see the Raiders go down to Las Vegas, but do I think that the state of Nevada should pay $800 million for that to happen? No, I don't think that should happen. So that's a struggle, that I personally have.
Yeah, I have no problem with some utility money there. I follow along with, I don't think we need it this year, but then in the spring we'll be doing our budget so we can make it whatever we want for next year. But Garrett, I think that if we can, we've designed or developed some redevelopment districts with the intent of trying to encourage mixed use, maybe even some residential with commercial and things like that. And if there's a piece of property that, because of just the expense of relocating the utilities, makes it prohibitive to do, which is what we wanted to be able to do, that maybe we should be able to assist them. The other thing I've actually looked into is some grant monies, and if those utilities are close enough to a street, and the example I'm thinking of, it sits back, but they are obvious from the street, there's actually some make, the America Beautiful street projects where you can get some additional grant monies, but you have to have some kind of funds, matching funds. And I see maybe even a bigger benefit here. If we've got a little bit, we can get a little bit of grant money. And Sierra Pacific is always handing out money for something. They got all these programs. Well, if at that point they say, well, we're kicking in this much, this is kicking in this much, how about you putting in a little bit too, and let's get this done. It's the only area that you still have power lines above ground. Why don't we just clean this up? And so maybe just a little bit there to help, to make it workable.
And also it could help the facade.
Getting rid of the hanging lines. That's what the beautification program is.
With the guy that has trees and power lines entangled in his front yard, I understand that well. Can I open up for public comment, item number 5? Number 6, assist the William Street Corridor project. And I'm assuming that the numbers that are in here for fiscal 17-18 and 18-19 are numbers that were set by the Board of Supervisors?
No, these are not numbers. So the Board of Supervisors strictly prioritized the left column. So the direction was just to put that as a priority there. So there wasn't any funding direction or there. I assume because they put it in there that giving it no funding was probably not the right. Cutting it off before that probably wasn't the right thing, wouldn't be the right recommendation. But yeah, and again, that's without, so William Street, and really it's part of this Greening William Street program where we came in and did all the design work with the public workshops to come up with some designs. I think I saw an email late today. We should be getting the final document from that design concepts any time now. But so the idea, and again, as part of the sales tax project, the beautification and of William Street, it's just to be able to help with that, to put some funds in that. And certainly the sales tax funds were never intended to be the full amount to redo any of the corridors. Is going to, we continue to look for grants and other opportunities for that. So it was just something to, and this is a section of roadway within the redevelopment district, as is, and I'm sure down the line, as we go out farther, we'll be having the same discussion about South Carson Street, which is actually has bigger issues than William Street.
Okay, let's open up item number 6 for discussion. Questions?
It's just a placeholder in reality.
Yeah.
Because we're out that far, so.
Okay, and then I'm going to open up that for public, okay? Item 7, and it's actually, it's listed number 6, but it's number 8. So item 7 and 8, both have no money in there. Purchase property for future redevelopment and provide more directional signage throughout the redevelopment areas. Open this up for discussion of whether we think that we should throw some money in there, or whether we are okay with those being zero balances.
Just in general, as a question, we're sure we don't want any signage money at all, because we think we have it all covered in the, I can see the Thursday budget that is sitting there for the project and see an ad alternative, but you're sure we don't need any signage money in either year?
Well, just as a low priority, and it kind of, as it's stated in there, I think the intent is that will be taken care of with individual corridor projects for some consistency. Yeah, for the downtown, it should be being taken care of with the downtown project. It includes some signs that are both pedestrian and traffic scale. They went through a process of identifying, where do we want to direct people to, the train museum and back and forth and everything, and things are within walking distance and driving distance and parking. So again, I think we keep the spreadsheet going forward for review, and if we have a project, if we think we need some in the future, we can add some funds in there. But I think we don't have an idea right now that we need funds for any specific part of the project.
All right, I'm going to open items 7 and 8 open for public comment. Okay, so on agenda item 5.1, really the only change we made was we took item number 3 and added $25,000 to that, which made the total for fiscal year 15-16. Oh, I'm sorry. We changed number 2 to $10,000 for this fiscal year 15-16. And then we took that money and rolled it over to the following fiscal year 16-17. The second change was item number 3, and changing the 125 to 150 for the 15-16 fiscal year. And everything else stays the same there. So we'll have a total of $200,000 for the facade improvement program for fiscal year 15 through 17 for the next 2 years. Can I have a motion to approve this?
I'll make the motion to approve it as stated on the revised spreadsheet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Craig Millet. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, we tabled item 5.2. And let's put that back and bring that back up for discussion. Before we hop into discussion on item 5.2, let's open this up for public comment in case there is any. Okay. Okay, so we left it last time with figuring out what the amount is that we want to do per parcel, and the owner match, the funding type, permitted improvements, and the approval process. So let's start with the easy one real quick. Approval process, we're all okay with the RAC having an approval process? Okay, so that will stay the same. Permitted improvements, what they're saying there is that it has to be permitted for the exterior improvements, and it has to be up to code for those exterior improvements only. Okay, we all okay with that? Okay. Now, funding type. Talk about that. I'm sure there'll be a discussion. Do we want to make this money?
Grant, but what?
Let's go back. Bullet 2 right there. We need to, I think, clarify that 50%.
Okay.
It's 50% of the total project
Cost.
with the maximum of, and the max to the city's 25,000. You already have, the city's only going to put in 25, but up to that point, it's a 100% match. It's 50-50, so 50% of the total project. Up to, yeah, okay, yeah, just.
Okay, good with that? Okay. Now talking about the money, is it grant money? Do you have to pay it back? If you do have to pay it back, do you have to pay it back over, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? Throw some ideas out there. Let's have a discussion. One thing that had been brought up was paying it back over 5 years with $5,000 a year.
I think we were discussing that they have to own the property for the year, otherwise they have to pay it back, and I'd be comfortable with that.
But
Grant.
above and beyond owning it for the year, what's the payback?
None. It's a grant unless you don't own it for a year, then you have to pay it all back.
I agree with that. I think I'm kosher with that.
No tricks. Yeah, no putting it up for sale tricks.
Okay with that? Okay, so property owner,
If sold, not is sold, or whatever.
Yep.
Is sold is fine too.
yeah, 100% reimbursed if sold within 1 year. Yep. And then after that 1 year,
Good to go.
exactly, no payback.
Right.
Okay, very good. We okay with the 50% and what we'll cover? Okay. Maximum funding per parcel. And I want to make this clear. This is per parcel. Okay, so if an owner owns 5 different parcels, they could come and ask for 5 different facade projects. Okay, if you have a building that's structured with one building here and there's a 0 lot line with another building right next to it, but they're 2 separate parcel numbers, even though they somewhat share a facade, they can come and ask for 2 different facade projects. Okay. So that's what they're saying here. It's
And
per
each
parcel
one-
number.
And each one has to then have at least 50,000 for each parcel.
Correct.
I mean, right? So if
Yes.
they were 3 parcels put together and the project was only 70,000, how are you gonna do that? No, I just want to be
Yes, I
clear
would agree
though.
with what you said. They may have a total project cost across 5 parcels, but it would be broken down by individual, how much. We'd have to do an estimate on that, because there's also some efficiency in one contract doing the whole thing and not separating it out into separate contracts. But I think, but they can break it down. Yes, it would be broken down per facade, I guess is the simple answer. And so they would only get, if one's smaller and it's not $50,000 of work, then that portion is smaller, yeah.
That's what I want to make sure. They don't, yeah, just because the project's 250,000, each parcel needs to be apportioned. And I'm okay with a single contractor apportioning and certifying that he's not, purposely making it work out. Yeah.
And when they present it to us too, if they want to present it to us, and they have 2 or 3 different parcels and they present it all as one project and just state that, this is 3 different parcels and do their paperwork that way.
Of course, they take the risk that they don't get funded because it's too much across, and you're not going to do the middle parcel and not the other 2. So their whole project may not get funded because it's too big, so.
So where did we define it as parcel?
Funding per parcel.
Top line.
Oh, okay, because some of these other programs said storefront. And you could have 2
That's why we're
storefronts
talking
on
about
one
it.
parcel, so, okay, as long as we got parcel, I just didn't see it.
I'd like to invite public comment on this issue now. Mr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Maurice White. If I could make one suggestion in regards to the having to own the property for a year to get, not have to pay it back, perhaps you could consider the property not being currently for sale, especially with commercial properties. Sometimes that sale might take 2 or 3 years to accomplish. And so if that person is looking to sell the property, it may not be completely within the guidelines of what you're thinking you're trying to do. So you might think about not currently for sale to be eligible for the grant.
Before you go, help me understand that better. Just, it's almost 8. My brain's working a little slower.
Time for a nap?
Yeah, and dinner.
And diaper change?
Someone to pat my back, yeah. So are you saying that someone that has their property on the market should be able to take advantage of it, or should not?
Be able.
Okay. So if they're actively on the market and they come to us and say, hey, it may
Right.
take me 2 years to sell my property, that just because they're on the market, they shouldn't be eligible. Fair enough.
Thank you.
Let's open that up for discussion. Thoughts?
A person can take it right back off the market for a month, come in for the program, and then put it back up for sale. The whole point is they're improving the facade, and as long as we say the 1 year, he can't take advantage of the system. So if he wants to put in $25,000 and to help sell his project, his property, then again, he's going to pay it back if he sells it within a year. So I think we covered really what we're trying to accomplish there. I don't see trying to check the tax rolls or check the real estate agents and say, is it for sale? I don't.
And I can understand where Mr. White's coming from. I mean, if I had the property and I said, I'll hold closing off till the day after a year, we're really getting down to finite, but I think it was just that they don't go in there, slam, bam, clean it up, and flip it, that's the intent.
Okay. Before I ask for a motion, I just want to make sure that for staff that we've cleared up any questions, issues that you guys have.
You have to fix the permitted areas.
Yep, thank you. Permitted areas, where did we, have you landed?
Okay, so what areas? We talked about this in the very beginning. What areas do we want to do? Let's discuss that.
1, 2, and commercial only, and it has to be older than 5 years, the property.
Correct.
Also
And
not
no other
getting
incentives.
tax incentives.
And we also clarified that it was a reimbursement program, not just a upfront payment.
Reimbursed is on the, I have reimbursed on the next slide. What was the other, this was no,
No tax
incentives. Oh, yeah.
Property getting current tax incentives. And then
City tax or state? Any
city.
city tax incentives.
Right, so that would be either redevelopment funding or other tax incentives, as I understand it. They couldn't be receiving any of those.
had property owner only, right, somewhere? That it could be, we had property owners only, right? The only,
Yeah, it kind of says it there. Maybe it's not explicit. Maybe say that a little better. Maybe make that a little more, well, let's see.
because it just says applicants, but I mean, it has to be the property owner. Just want to make sure we're clear that the business owner is not coming in for paint and a awning. It's the actual property owner.
Yeah, I think we, in his, I don't know if it's actually written in the order, but it said that it could be a tenant improvement as long as he had the property owner sign off. The property owner has to approve it. Yeah.
And that's it. The tenant could come up and say, hey, I want to do this, but the property owner's going to be the one signing. Okay, who wants to make this, this wonderful motion for item 5.2?
I'll start. So I move to recommend to the Redevelopment Authority the implementation of a facade improvement program for properties within the redevelopment district as we have specified here on the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee with the provisions as modified tonight by this committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Court Cardinal. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Passes unanimously.
Wow, we're working hard.
Now we're going to go to non-action items, staff reports and updates on matters relating to RAC. Anything you got for us, Lee?
No, I don't, not anything to report, other just talk about future agenda items. You know, our next quarterly meeting is May, and that's when we'll have the special event applications coming before you. We'll have a facade improvement program in place to bring those before you, so that'll be a nice busy meeting. Now that you're going quarterly, we actually have things on the agenda. And again, a reminder for any special event applicants, those are due April 15th, I believe. And we'll take this planning budget item and facade improvement program to the Board of Supervisors. I think probably where are we, February? Probably the first meeting in March. See, but to get all this, yeah.
Okay, RAC member reports and comments. Court, you got anything?
Nope.
Okay. Lori?
Just nice job, everyone working together. Nice job.
Chris?
No.
Great.
I just have a general question, Lee, or staff, or board members. We're making all this effort to improve downtown, get the tourists here, more special events, and I don't even see a sign on the freeway that says Carson City Historic District. There's one that says Virginia City. What's it take to get something up there that at Highway 50 off-ramp or something? If there is, I haven't seen it, but there is absolutely ones that say Virginia City, that direction away from Carson, and there's nothing that says Carson City Capital, Historic District, anything, you know.
You should have put $5,000 in the signage.
Oh, signage.
Yeah, signage. It was, you missed that spot.
No,
It wasn't in the redevelopment district.
Craig, contact Patrick, contact me, I'll get you the contact information, but Patrick Pittenger in the Transportation Department has been, I'm surprised that there's actually none, because I know we've worked on it. We have signs now, the brown signs coming off the freeway and directing people to a point where we don't have a district sign, but we get them there. Yeah, I'd be surprised, but I think he can give us information on where they are and what the status of that is, because I know that was part of the freeway. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, I'll get you guys out of here. on the next agenda or a future agenda, I would love to see, and we've talked about this one-on-one as well, the feasibility of getting Wi-Fi for Carson City downtown. And what I mean by that is I want to sit on the Capitol grounds on a bench at the Nevada legislature and have Wi-Fi on my cell phone or my iPad. I don't expect it to be lightning fast like it would be in my living room, but to be able to have something like that, I think that falls totally and completely into what redevelopment does and to what we're trying to do for downtown. Want to see how feasible that would be and really how much that would cost. This is where I open it up for public comments for what we covered tonight or any other topic you'd like to talk about.
Can we wore you out?
Anybody got a motion to adjourn the meeting for me?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Done, second.
We're all done? Thank you. Thanks for going easy on me. Have a good night.
It's like-